همونطوری که در شروع جلسه من خدمتتون عرض کردم، یکی از هدفهای اصلی ما اینه که بتوانیم مسائل و مشکلاتی که در بلوچستان وجود داره و خواستها و نیازها رو در اینجا بررسی بکنیم که در نهایت به کنفرانس بزرگ بلوچستان احتمالاً تا آخر همین امسال برسیم. دو پنل باقی مونده داریم. یک پنل حقوق بشر که خانم رویا کاشفی و خانم مگی مورفی در شرکت میکنن. آقای دکتر حسین بر هم، محمد حسن حسین بر هم از واشنگتن حضور دارن. ریاست جلسه هم با آقای سیروس ملکوتی است و از هیئت امنای انجمن. و جلسه آخر ما که دکتر رضا حسین بر اوپنینگش میکنه، بازش میکنه، در رابطه با راه حل هاست که بیشترین زمان رو به اون جلسه اختصاص میدیم، به این دلیل که بتوانیم که باز دسترسی به مسائلی پیدا بکنیم که در کنفرانس آینده مورد توجه واقع بشه.
این پنل ما به انگلیسی هستش به خاطر حضور خانم مرفی که محبت کرده از بروکسل آمده. به همین دلیل جلسه ما به انگلیسی. امیدوارم که مشکلی نباشه و اگر که لازم باشه میشه در آخر بحث ترجمه بشه. منم الان که اینجا نشستم 2 تا کلاه رو سرمه، هم صحبت دارم میکنم هم مسئول اداره این جلسه هستم. I've just explained that because of you, we're holding the session in English, which is perfect because I speak much better in English than I do in Farsi, so it's good for me. And that I'm wearing 2 hats. I'm chairing the session as well as speaking. I'm going to start with my own recommendations because what we're hoping to do for the future conference is to find out problems and to see where work has been done, where work hasn't been done, and what needs to be addressed for the main conference that we are hoping to hold towards the end of the year. So I'm going to talk about, I'm the head of the Human Rights Committee at Association of Iranian Researchers. So my concern and my standpoint is always from a human rights point of view. So as the head of ACI's Human Rights Committee, naturally, my concern is the situation of human rights in the region. I'm going to divide what I'm going to talk about into 2 sections. The first is the reporting of human rights issues, and the second is the actual violation, what we mean when we talk about a human rights violation. As far as the reporting is concerned, there's a serious lack of information about what actually happens in Balochistan. By this, I mean information concerning the region is highly politicized. This has 2 consequences. On one hand, the state reports of wars with smugglers, with terrorists, and it uses this to legitimize its heavy military presence in the region, and it shapes public opinion based on this, and it somehow manages to convince people that what they're doing there is just, it's correct, it's for national security, and it seems to legitimize, gives credence to its own violations of the rights of Iranians in that part of Iran. On the other hand, organizations and parties who report human rights violations from the region are also highly politicized. So the only news that comes out of Iran concerning the region, again, is only to do with arrests, with executions, with detentions. We don't hear anything else about the region. And if we're going to talk about the aspirations of the people, if we're going to talk about the problems of the region, I personally don't see it purely as political. I think there are many other problems in the region that needs to be addressed. The politics of it is only one aspect of it. The point is that human rights goes way behind arrests and deaths and executions. It concerns every aspect of our lives and our right to a fair, comfortable life as equal citizens. We've heard a lot about what this equity could mean, but I'm talking about as one person with one right. In view of the objective of this roundtable, which is to identify problems and assess the level of information available for presentation and discussion at the main conference later this year, I'd like to recommend 2 things. on reporting of human rights violations. It's wonderful to see that the people of Balochistan and their needs and aspirations are being represented here through 4 political organizations and 1 international organization that's dedicated to the plight of world's ethnic groups. These Baluchi political organizations carry a heavy duty on their shoulders. Among the most important, in my view, is the duty to portray the region and its people as they truly are and to try and change the public perception. If we take the extreme view, the people of Balochistan are thieving, smuggling terrorists who have no other wish than to separate from Iran. For this reason, the actions of the regime may be condoned, tolerated, and accepted as legitimate. This small round table has been attacked by many who believe discussing the problems of Balochistan is helping the secessionist agenda. Well, far from it. Our aim is to be as inclusive as possible and to try and find how the lives of people of an important region in Iran can be improved, and this can never be achieved other than through dialogue. I believe this misapprehension is purely because there is serious lack of real, credible information about the region. So reporting of the reality of life, good or bad, in the region is very important. It's crucial that Iranians hear how life really is in the region, to understand the true dimensions of the tragedy that is their everyday life experience, the extreme poverty, the high unemployment, particularly the youth unemployment, lack of equitable access to education, lack of investment, of state-sponsored financial assistance, inadequate and inequitable access to healthcare, the appalling situation of women and children due to this extreme poverty and high unemployment, as well as local and cultural traditions. If, for example, I take the case of women and children of the region, I found it very, very difficult to find information, to find research or any study. I'm involved with the women's movement in Iran, and for many months, in preparation of this meeting and the future conference, I have been begging people, has there been any work? I want to know what's been done in Iran. And no one's been able to find anything that's been done from within Iran, from within the Baluchi community, addressing the true points of it. We've all been able to find is the international studies that the United Nations or other organizations that are helping in the region have told us. So we have nothing from the Baluchi perspective. We're only hearing of what is being told about them. We're not hearing from them. What I'm saying is, it's not that it doesn't exist. I'm sure somebody somewhere in Balochistan is doing this wonderful work. It's just we can't access it. We can't have access to it. If I look at Kurdistan as an example, there's no indication that the situation in Balochistan is any better than Kurdistan. But we know so much about the Kurds and their plights. The regime is involved with fighting the so-called terrorism and smuggling just as much there as they are in Balochistan. But we hear and react to the news of arrests and violations in the tiniest, remotest village of the Kurdish region. But where's the news about Balochistan? We're just not getting it. We're not getting credible, verified news from Balochistan. More importantly, from Kurdistan, we hear of tragedies and problems caused by local culture and traditions, which affects the social aspect of their lives. We hear of women setting themselves on fire. We hear about honor killings. We hear everything else that is also committed in the name of culture and tradition. This is really important to have this kind of information from Balochistan as well. Because of this amount of information that comes out of Kurdistan, there is a great international awareness of the Kurdish situation and their plight. The public and international perception is that they are brave warriors that are being wronged. But the Baluchis are smugglers and terrorists. Why? Why am I constantly referring to this? Because every time I've come across things, this is how I've been told, oh, don't go there. We don't want to have anything to do with terrorists or whatever. Why? Why is this bad perception? So the most important thing is the question of accurate, systematic reporting of the true situation. This is really crucial. The Kurds have been really good at this. So they use their networks in Iran very well, and they've managed to build a very good rapport with international organizations. So there's a great deal to learn from the Kurdish experience. Therefore, as far as the main aim of the future conference is concerned, one area that needs serious study, as far as I'm concerned, is why there is this incorrect and unjust image still persisting about Baluchis, and how it can and it should be improved to ultimately affect and improve real lives in the situation there. If I turn my attention, my second point now, so that was about reporting. That's one area that I think needs a great deal of work and attention. We need to find out why we have this problem, where the shortfalls are, so we can try and address it, improve it. But if I turn my attention to the actual human rights violations, it's really important to know what human rights are, so we know when our rights are being violated, so we can identify them. For example, that's something that may seem really trivial and right at the bottom of all of our lists of concern, but it's nevertheless there in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is the right to rest and leisure. Article 24 says every human being must have the right to rest and leisure and paid holiday. When did that happen in Baluchistan? When have we ever heard about anyone? So it's really important to know. But seriously, there's a real problem, and not being aware of our rights is a real issue. I have a personal request for the main conference from all of our colleagues who are here and all of those who are watching and hearing us. Again, as a human rights advocate, I found very little or no information, as I've already said, about the situation of women and children. I keep coming back, I keep stressing about women and children because I think it's really important. I keep concentrating on it. I believe that studying the lives of women and children of this region throws light on all the other problems, such as the consequence of extreme poverty, such as the consequence of households that are hit by unemployment, by illness, by disease, the consequences of lack of access to education, and so on. And it puts it in perspective of real lives. And crucially, it highlights the serious issues concerning cultural and traditional practices that adversely affect the lives of women and children in the region. So if we're talking about finding solutions for the region, I don't see it, as I've already said, purely political, because there are cultural practices, there are traditions in the region that unless we address it, it's not going to be resolved. It's really, really important in light of a religious regime that gives power to these kind of discriminations, these kind of discriminatory practices, and legitimizes them legally. I'm talking of honor killings, of marrying of young girls, children, of polygamy, which is a real problem in the region, unless, again, we accept that there are men who marry many women and divorce them very easily, unless we accept that it's easy to divorce in the region. There's lack of birth certificates. Children are born without birth certificates. The mothers then will, once the husband manages to divorce them and marry second, third, fourth wife, these children are not protected anywhere because there's no birth certificate. Nobody covers them. So these are real issues that we have to vocalize. We have to identify them, and we have to work to overcome them. The dangerous argument that Islamic Republic uses is an excuse of culture, excuse of tradition, excuse of religion. And it's really, really dangerous because Islamic Republic advocates this internationally to excuse its own violations of human rights. It talks about Islamic human rights, its own interpretations. And if we don't stand up to these kind of cultural problems that we have in all of our regions in Iran, it's not exclusive to Baluchistan, but we're talking about Baluchistan today. So if we allow them to carry on, we should be catching them on this. We shouldn't allow them to do this, and we shouldn't be allowing ourselves to use it as an excuse. This standpoint, using culture as an excuse, actually allows the Islamic Republic to legally discriminate against religious minorities, including Sunni Muslims. As we've already heard, a Sunni Muslim cannot attain high office in Iran purely because of his religion. And he's a Muslim, and this is supposed to be an Islamic Republic. So unless we identify the problems, the true problems, and we don't feel ashamed of vocalizing them, because sometimes there's a taboo in saying the kind of problems, cultural problems, that goes on, because we feel that perhaps then there's going to be value judgment, and which is wrong. But we have to identify the problem, we have to try and overcome them. So unless we identify, vocalize, and address them, we can't begin to overcome the deep-rooted social problems of the region. So my second and final recommendation for the main conference is to find, identify, and to study to see if any studies have already been carried out in Iran. We have to try and find them. I'm asking all of you who are political activists of the region to see if any work has been done on the situation of women and children in the region, and if nothing exists, for us to try and do something about it for the conference, so that at least we have something to present, because we can't be talking about human rights by only concentrating on the violations of the system. We all know that happens. We have to address the cultural problems, the social problems, and things that have been there for centuries, and we have to try and overcome them. Thank you. So that's me done as the speaker, and now me as the chair of the panel. I'm going to ask Maggie to please pick up where I've left off, from the point of view of an organization that works with the kind of information that comes from us. And it's a problem that all of us have to try and address, and help organizations such as Maggie's that tries to then fight for us on an international level.
I'm British of origin, not English, British, but I do live in the Netherlands at the moment. So if that's of any use, I apologise for my country's deeds in the past which split up Balochistan. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I thought it was going to be a smaller event. It's so encouraging to see so many people here as well. And really what I wanted to bring, I guess, to the event is just a few remarks on the type of information that we seek as an organisation that writes reports. Obviously, I'm not Baluch. I've never been to the region. I doubt, as a result of my work for UNPO, I will ever be allowed to go to the region either. But it's very important that we get good information from you. And so I just have a few remarks, really. I would have loved to have been able to surprise you all and start speaking in Farsi, but obviously I cannot. So I can't comment either on the discussions that have taken place today. Every so often I hear what I believe to be an interesting argument, and I do hope that some of the information from this will be made available in English, even if it is just for my own benefit.
I shall endeavour to provide you
even if it's just a brief overview. For those of you that don't know much about UNPO, Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization, we are a membership organization with about 55 members at the moment. And the members are indigenous peoples, minorities, and that could be religious or ethnic, linguistic, or a bit of everything. Occupied territories or unrecognized territories. So you probably find yourself slotting into one category or 6 categories. And what we try to do is act as the middleman. We try to provide a platform so that people like yourselves, who might not always get access to politicians, European politicians at the European Parliament, for example, or might not get access to the UN, we try to provide that. We try to provide this somewhat international front so that you can work through us and we can present your cases or bring you to the table. It's interesting and perhaps ironic for you sat here that when I speak to people and they ask me what I do, I end up using Kurdistan or the Kurds as an example, because a lot of people do know about the Kurdish question. They do know about issues of territory, of boundaries. They also know of the oppression. And yet, as you said, you know, the issues that go on in Balochistan are probably worse. And so what I try to do is use Kurdistan as an example so that people nod their heads, oh yeah, I've heard about that. And then say, well, actually, another issue that you might find even more interesting is Balochistan, a region which has been chopped into 3, a little bit like the Kurdish region has been chopped into several pieces as well. And really by highlighting that some things that have happened in Kurdistan or some other groups that they might have heard that are UNPO members, such as Kosovo, or for example, the Maasai in Kenya, they're actually quite, almost every single violation or every single developmental issue or every single political issue is actually playing out in Balochistan as well. So I do try to make sure that my friends, people that I come into contact with, do learn about Balochistan almost immediately, and that's partly because I do feel very strongly about the Baluch cause. because I was thinking, we deal with the Mapuche, an indigenous people in Chile who have language issues. We deal with the Ogoni people in Nigeria who have environmental issues, Kosovo, political issues. But all of these issues are actually taking place in Baluchistan as well, including language and culture and regional security, and there are hundreds of issues. So as a result of that, perhaps I will give some pointers or some recommendations or some requests and pleas in some respects. One of the biggest criticisms that we come across as an organization, and in fact the Iranian authorities have said it to me directly at the UN, is what do you know? First of all, you don't know anything because you're not Iranian. Second of all, these people that you're with, they're all exiles. They're all diaspora. Well, they don't say exiles. They all live in their comfortable houses in London or New York. What do they know? They don't live there anymore. They know nothing. They're not involved. What they're talking about is politics. It's not about human rights. And that's something that is really, really, really key. You need information from the ground. You've already said it, but it's absolutely key. We need to have reports that are coming from the people within. It can't be... I cannot, as a UNPO representative trying to write a report on Baluchistan, I need to have information from the ground. I can't regurgitate an Amnesty International report. I can't use a Human Rights Watch report. In any case, the big guys, Amnesty or Human Rights Watch, a lot of the time they will only devote a paragraph on minority or nationality issues. And so I am trying to devote an entire report to it, but I need information from the ground. And by having good, strong links, and I know it's not easy, but by having the information come from the ground, you're making your argument strong, and you're also already defending yourself against the attacks from the Iranian authorities that will say you don't know what's going on. So that's one point, I think. Second of all, and related to that, again, in order to kind of protect yourself from attack when you're writing your reports that you give to me, I think it's important to use Iranian law, to look at the Iranian constitution, to look at, say, Article 17 of the Iranian constitution, which says that language and ethnicity and religion is not a marker of privilege. That's ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous. But use the Iranian constitution as your guide. Use Iranian law as your guide, because otherwise we also open ourselves to attacks of, oh, well, what is this European Convention on Human Rights? Well, we don't need that. Use the documents that have been created by the government in power. Then you are using this as a marker which is in many ways very, very powerful. You are proving that the violations are against the Iranian constitution rather than international law or a UN convention that they will see as being irrelevant to them. Another issue, credibility, and this is also related to getting information from the ground. One blog report about a Baluchi girl who has been raped or kidnapped or killed is not enough. One blogger report is better than none, but we need more people reporting on it. So if there's any way that you are able to encourage more people to admittedly risk their lives or put their neck on the line to report this, and I do understand that this is very, very difficult. I'm not saying this in any naive fashion. It is incredibly difficult, but you need as many reports as possible that correlate with each other, that have the same spelling of the name of the people that are involved, that have the right date of birth for the person that's been involved. Because a lot of the time, not from you guys, but from other members, we'll get reports which don't correlate, and then we can't use them. They have to be credible. They have to match. Also, in terms of language, the language that's used in a report is also really, really important. Quite often, with a couple of other members that I have in the back of my mind, I'll receive reports that use language which is so passionate, but it leaves yourself open to sounding irrational or reactionary. And so you almost have to step back and go into the diplomatic language that is dry and boring, but it is the UN diplomatic language. If I have a report which says that 700 people have been removed from a village, this is atrocious, this is disgusting, how can anyone do anything about it? It just seems like maybe they've exaggerated that number. So this is just a point about language. If I'm going to cite a report from any of your organizations, I need it to be as diplomatic and formal and boring and dry as possible. I actually use the 4 Iranian groups that are UNPO members. So we have the Baluch, we have the Kurds, the Azerbaijani Turks, and the Ahwazi Arabs. I use the 4 as an example to my other members a lot of the time. I say that the work that these 4 members do, and I thank Nasser a lot again for this is the reason why I clap. The fact that they work in unison, or there is some cohesion and unity, is really, really powerful. When we were at the UN back in January, February this year, unfortunately our Ahwazi Arab representative was stuck in the US because of the snow, and our Azerbaijani Turk representative was fell sick, so wasn't able to be there. And instead of this being a catastrophe, it may have actually worked to our benefit. And the reason for that was we had Nasser here, sat in a meeting with some diplomats from various country missions, and Nasser was talking very, very passionately about the Ahwazi Arab cause. And equally, we had a Kurdish representative that was talking passionately about the Azerbaijani Turk cause. And I think that this is something which is really important. I don't know what the argument that you had earlier, or the very passionate outburst that you had, but I was interested and wanted to know what you were saying, because I wondered whether it was similar to this. I think that the best way to approach reports is to be unified and to use as many examples as possible, but to show some unity. And I think it was so powerful to have 2 people representing more other people's causes. It was really, really powerful, and I think that the diplomats that we met with were very, very impressed. And I think that it added more credence to what was being said. As soon as you're willing to fight someone else's cause, you're seen in a greater light. I'm not sure whether that was anything related to what you were saying earlier, but I thought that might be an interesting way to finish, really. I do say to other UNPO members, listen, our members from Iran, they're working together, they're solid, they're unified. If only my Pakistani members would do the same, I would be so much happier. So I'm going to leave it there and say thank you for all the hard work that has gone into making the reports, to making our reports solid so that we can present them to the UN or to the European Parliament, and to hope that we can continue along the same vein and continue with the hard work and continue to try to get the Baluchi issues as well known as the Kurdish issues, but not to the detriment of the Kurdish issue either. So.
Point of Iranians working together in unison in December, we ran a campaign, Be Our Voice, against executions, and all of the political groups that are present here, as well as Iranian Kurds and Ahwazi Arabs and Turks and many, many, many human rights activists and other political organizations, not ethnic or religious, signed a campaign that basically it said that we are all equal, and founded on Article 2 of the UDHR, that if ever anyone is being executed in Iran, regardless of where the hangman's noose is, we are all together going to condemn it. And they've all signed that, and we're all working towards it. And we've seen that with Farzad Kamangar and what happened. We've had this unity. And again, together we issued a statement and we sent it to Mr. Ban Ki-moon. So that unity, I think it shows coming of age of 30 years of fighting, trying to fight it singly. It just shows coming of age, which is very encouraging for the future, and which is why we all sit here and bash our heads and try and find a solution. I add one more thing that you say about using the constitution and the laws in Iran. I also refer to the Islamic Human Rights Charter when I do my reports, because Iran doesn't accept UDHR, it uses Islamic Human Rights Charter, which I think is ridiculous. But because certain rights are recorded there, and what they do in Iran actually violates the charter they say they agree to, I use that as well. So that's something that perhaps we could all look at. I'm happy to say that we can benefit from the knowledge and the presence of Dr. Hossein-Bor again. He's going to talk to us about the human rights from the legal perspective.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you, probably you have heard about Winfrey Goldberg. She's a famous actress and entertainer in the US. But of course, to illustrate on that really whole situation, of course, when we were students, they said that she is a minority. Of course, she was discriminated because she was a minority. She was a woman. And then, of course, she was discriminated against because she happened to be a black woman. And thirdly, of course, she was discriminated because she was a Jewish, another minority. And fourth, of course, she was discriminated again because she was a lesbian. So, you know, this is
she had everything going for her.
Yeah, so this is exactly the situation of the Baluch in Iran when it comes to human rights. So,
what, you're black, you're Jewish?
You're black, you are Jewish, you are a woman, and you are all these things. So, all these things happen. But let's look, I briefly mentioned the laws, which of course discriminate against the Baluch. And of course, when I say Baluch, it is probably against the Kurds, against the Arabs, against the Turks, Turkmens. And of course, we also look at the practices of the Islamic Republic and also the patterns of human rights violation. First, of course, the human rights violations against the Baluch are institutionalized in the Iranian constitutions. For example, Article 50 clearly states that Baluch, who happen to be Baluch, they speak their own language, culture, and who happen to be Sunni, of course they cannot run for high offices. They can never be the supreme leader, which of course is not elected. He's appointed by represent the Almighty. And then of course they cannot be elected for the president. I mean, this is of course the constitution. But of course in practice, when you see that no Baluch whatsoever has ever been appointed as a governor of their own province or as a mayor or as any other thing. And of course, this is at the our provincial level that Baluch, 90% of the employees, this is documented, the mayors, the governors, all the officers below them, they are non-Baluch coming from other areas. And then of course, officially, if you are a Sunni, you are a Baluch, and you are, the Sunnis are 1/3 of the population. You have no right to participate. And of course, if you add to that, if you are a Baluch woman, of course you have no right whatsoever. And in addition to that, of course, for example, look at the federal level. For example, no Baluch or Sunni has ever been appointed as an ambassador or as a minister. And of course, we are a great country. I really like what Dr. Lajawardi said. But you know, compare this, for example, the life of Baluch in the Gulf countries, which is not Baluchistan, but they are the large population. The Minister of Education in Bahrain, she's a Baluch. We are a Baluch, small minority. We have 5, 6 ministers, Baluch ministers, in the Sultanate of Oman. And of course, we have President of Pakistan, and he happened to be Baluch. And of course, discrimination, whether it is racial discrimination, religious discrimination, economic discrimination, and sexual discrimination, all of them. And at the same time, so that is the Constitution, which institutionalizes the discrimination against Baluch, against non-Persians, against Sunnis. That is the and of course, when you go to the Iranian laws, the systematic discrimination against women has been institutionalized. And of course, we are not talking about the Baluch women only, because it is all women in Iran. If you have to testify as a witness in a court of law in Iran, testimony of 2 women equals to 1. And of course, under the Iranian law also, the inheritance which is given under the law to women is half of men. For example, if there are 1 brother and 2 sisters, the property inheritance is divided half and half. Half of it is given to the 2 sisters, the other half
To the 1 boy.
So these are, of course, I'm just giving you some examples, but these are basic discrimination. And of course, when it comes to the practices, of course, you know that torture is systematic, widespread, and also institutionalized, like cutting hands on, and all kind of tortures. And of course, you know that anybody who ends up in Iranian jails end up singing whatever they say, because and of course, to be fair, it is not only Islamic Republic. It was there before them. Existed before the Islamic Republic, so it has been systematic. And of course, when it comes to fair trial, there is no fair trial. I have a colleague, she's a human rights lawyer, probably you know Mehrang Gizekar. She went with her client to defend her client, and of course the judge told her, sister, no, he's a man, her client was a man, he's a man, he can defend himself. In other words, you are a woman, lawyer, you should shut up. So, I mean, it's kind of... And then, of course, in terms of practices, for example, the other thing that in Balochistan happened very frequently and systematically, there is a screening process if you apply to university for admission or if you apply for a job, there is a screening process to test you for your religious, and of course, if you are a Sunni, automatically.
Thank you, and stop you. Please forgive me. Please, I beg of you, all of you who work with Iran, who work within the region, you need to get credible, verifiable information out from Balochistan. We've had this in the meetings that we've had at my house, always talking about this. You know how I'm really concerned about this. We need to work hard, and we need to find out why we're not getting these informations out of Iran. And if there's a way of overcoming it, we need to overcome it. My organization, our organization, Association of Iranian Researchers, and all its resources and abilities is at your disposal. We want to be able to find a solution. We want to be able to work towards a better future for Iran, for all of us.
Yeah, just one point. The Baluch are less than 5% of Iranian population, but more than half of the executions in Iran, they have been
in Balochistan.
In Balochistan. Yeah. And including 30 young students in one day, followed by another day. That tells you the discrimination, the depths of the human rights violation.
And I think the other point to remember is that discrimination against women and religious minorities is not exclusive to Balochistan, but what happens is we have cultural and traditional practices in all regions in Iran that have now found a voice in the law, in the legal system in Iran. And unless we as leaders or human rights activists and whatever try to overcome our own shortcomings in our own cultural problems, in our own cultural and traditional problems, we're not going to be able to overcome, because the system is not helping us. So we've got to try and do it from grassroots up, which is how, again, the Kurds have been doing it so well. And we need to be able to apply that to Balochistan so she can do her. Thank you all very much.
قسمت آخر جلسه امروز در رابطه با راه حل‌ها و کوتاه در رابطه با پیشنهادات مسئله اصلی رو مطرح بکنم. ما باید به ما کمک مالی بکنید که ما بتونیم کارمون رو انجام بدیم. علتش اینه که ما نه از 400 میلیون دلار بهره میبریم، نه از خونه ویلایی در لندن، نه در امریکا. دوستی همین الان من میگفتم که یکی از افرادی که سابقا هم متاسفانه عضو انجمن ما بوده در لندن سخنرانی داشتم که درست عکس این جلسه‌ای که ما امروز اینجا هستیم. خبری هم که از دیروز از امریکا دارن اینه که در $500,000 جایزه‌ای که گرفته شده، گیرنده جایزه تاکید 100% بر این داشته که فکر اینه که جمهوری اسلامی نباشه چون به ضرر ایرانه و به ضرر منطقه رو از ذهنتون به دور بکنید. در حال واقعیت هم اینه که نه، حالا من وارد اسم و افراد نمیشم. واقعیت قضیه در اینه که به این دلیل گفتن این کمک مالی ما رو به ما کمک بکنید، چون ما نه از $400 میلیون نه به اضافه $500,000 بهره میبریم. باید که این کارا رو بتونیم انجام بدیم. هیچ تفاوت نمیکنه. مسئله در اینه که عضوی که سابقا عضو انجمن ما بوده، قبلا که دانشجو بوده، نه در موقعی که با آقای خاتمی دکترا میداده، در حال مسئله‌ای که برای ما وجود داره ادامه این حرکته. ما برخلاف بسیاری میخوایم این ایران باقی بمونه و اگر بخواد باقی بمونه هیچ راهی وجود نداره مگر اینکه این دیالوگ ها ادامه پیدا بکنه، مگر اینی که دموکراسی به وجود بیاد. پایه اولی که در فدرالیسم وجود داره بر اساس دموکراسی است. دکتر سیمبور سال صحبتشون رو خواهم کرد، ولی واقعیت رو بگم. ببینید، من میدونم که مشکل ما چیه. مشکل ما اینه که ما مخالف تمامیت، کلیت و موجودیت جمهوری اسلامی هستیم. برای شخص من که اینجا نشستم در خدمتتون، اصلاح طلب 1000 برابر بدتر از اصولگراست. اصولگرا 2000 برابر. اینها بی‌هویتی جامعه ایران، اینها حقارت و ننگ جامعه ایران. کلیت جمهوری اسلامی در این هست. یک سوال رو میشه مطرح کرد در میزگردها و پنل‌های VOA و BBC. این بحث اساسی باید وجود داشته باشه. ما جمهوری اسلامی رو میخواهیم یا نمیخواهیم؟ این بحث وجود نداره، چون به نفع استعمارگر پیر انگلیس نیست، به نفع دولت آقای بوش و اوباما هم نیست. ولی یک چیز رو من خدمتتون عرض بکنم، به رغم خواست این دو دولت استعمارگر امروز که همه چیز در اختیار دارند و امکانات گسترده مالی جمهوری اسلامی اون بدنش فعلا در امروز، یک بحث همیشه وجود داره. بحثی که وجود داره اینه که 11 ماه از جنبش مردم ایران گذشته. 11 ماه. در این 11 ماهی که گذشته، به رغم 2 تلویزیون بین‌المللی و امکانات گسترده مالی و دولتی، اینها موفق نشدن که گروه دیگر از جمهوری اسلامی رو روی کار بیارن. این یعنی آگاهی و شعور مردم ایران. این یعنی قدرتی که امروز دیگه بعد از 30 سال رادیوی BBC به تنهایی نمیتونه انقلاب بکنه. تلویزیون BBC و VOA و این همه پول هم نتونستن جا بندازن. این یعنی قدرت. مسئله‌ای که وجود داره مسئله اساسی ماست. مسئله‌ای که بحث اقوام، ملیت هاست، خلق هاست. بازم دارم میگم هر اسمی که میخواید روش بگذارید، اگر 70% جامعه ایرانه، به طور قطع و یقین شوونیسم فارس نیست، شوونیسم جمهوری اسلامی است. اینه که این احاطه و این حقارت و این ننگ رو برای جامعه ما به وجود آورده. از این راه قدم برداریم. بحث فدرالیسم رو دکتر حسین‌پور به عنوان راه حل مطرح میکنن. آقای دکتر رضا حسین‌پور که فعال سیاسی هستند، فعال سیاسی و سخنگوی جبهه مردم بلوچستان و محقق در زمینه توسعه بسیار کار کردن، در این زمینه صحبتشون میکنن و امیدوار هستم که باز فرصتی باشه برای بحث‌های بعدی. خواهش میکنم بفرمایید.
من امروز صحبت ها رو که میشنیدم یاد یک داستان افتادم که یک نفر رفته بود در ولایتی دوردست برای کار. اونجا کارگیرش نیومد، مریض شد، ناراحت شد، رفت پیش یک ملا یه نامه بنویسه برای ولایت خودش رو بفرسته و ملا نامه رو نوشت. گفت حالا بخون چی نوشتی. ملا که نامه رو خوند، اون شروع کرد به گریه کردن، زار زار گریه کردن. ملا پرسید که چرا گریه میکنی؟ گفت که نمیدونستم که حالم اینقدر بده. حالا ما چون رسم روزخوانی در ایران رایج هست، در روزخوانی نظیر نداریم، ولی در راه حل بسیار بسیار کند هستیم. من امروز مسئله رو میخواهم، مسئله فدرالیسم و شیپور رو از اون دهن گشادش بزنم. یعنی از یک چیزهای شروع بکنم که ببینیم اونها رو میشود در فدرالیسم حل کرد یا ما همینطور صحبت از فدرالیسم میکنیم بدون اینکه بدانیم واقعا حلال مشکلات ما خواهد بود یا نه. شما میدونید اخیراً آقای احمدی نژاد خواستار این شد که 5 میلیون نفر از تهران خارج بشن. جمعیت معمولاً در اونجا جمع میشن که قدرت هست. قدرت در تهران هست. مردم هم از هر کجا به سوی تهران میروند برای اینکه اونجا سهمی از قدرت داشته باشند و چون این دولت به هیچ کسی سهمی نمیدهد، این مردم علیه جمهوری اسلامی بلند شده اند و تعدادشون هم زیاده. جمهوری اسلامی میخواد 5 میلیونشون رو به این صورت به جاهای دیگر بفرسته. من یه مقاله نوشتم که اتفاقاً این مردمی که اونجا اومدن دنبال کار و شغل و امتیازات اومدند. اگر قدرت رو شما در ایران پخش بکنید، این مردم هم به اونجاها میروند، برای اینکه کسی عاشق تهران نیست. مردم عاشق قدرت، کار، شغل و زندگی بهتر هستند. حالا قدرت رو بین مناطق مختلف ایران تقسیم بکنن. وقتی قدرت تقسیم شد، اونها مردم هم دوان میروند در اون مناطق مختلف. یک مشکل دیگری که در ایران داریم و احمدی نژاد هم اخیراً به صورتهای مختلف میخواد مطرحش بکنه، مسئله فقر هست. خود جمهوری اسلامی اعلام کرد که 49 میلیون نفر ایران فقیر هستند. اون یارانها رو هم گفتند که مردم ثبت نام بکنند. امیدشون این بود که 50 میلیون ثبت نام میکنند. اتفاقا 60 میلیون ثبت نام کردند. معلوم شد که از 70 میلیون 60 میلیونشون فقیر هستند. خب فقر هم در اثر بی‌لیاقتی یکی دو نفر در اون رأس هست. حالا اگر ما طبق اون فرمول قدرت رو پخش بکنیم به سرتاسر ایران، خود به خود عده‌ای از اینهایی که قدرت به اونها میرسه حتما آدمهای با کفایتی خواهند بود. حتما آدمهایی خواهند بود که میتوانند شغل ایجاد بکنند، کار ایجاد بکنند، آبادی بکنند. بنابراین دیگر از 70 میلیون 60 میلیون نفر فقیر نخواهند بود. بنابراین من فکر میکنم که با تقسیم قدرت و سهامی کردن حاکمیت ملی این دوتا رو تا به حال میشود به این صورت حل کرد. مسئله سومی که بسیار مهم هست و من در اینجا اشاره کردم، مسئله بی‌لیاقت کل بوروکراسی ایران و دستگاه‌های اجراییش هست. طبق اسناد بانک بین المللی، بانک جهانی، جمهوری اسلامی از 100 معمولاً بین 20 تا 30 نمره گرفته است. تصورش بکنید، از 100 نمرش بین 20 تا 30 بوده در تمام زمینهای مدیریت. در زمان احمدی نژاد این بی‌لیاقتی و بی‌کفایتی به 15 از 100 رسیده است. برای همین است که خودشون میگویند که فقط 15% پروژه های ایران برنامه پنجم عملی شده است. اگر قدرت بین سر تا سر ایران تقسیم بشود و در هر منطقه یک گروهی، یک نهاد انتخابی، حالا دولت اسمش بگذاریم، استاندار اسمش بگذاریم، هرچی اسمش بگذاریم، به اونها برسد، این خود به خود به مقدار زیادی کاهش پیدا می کند. یعنی حدود کارایی افراد در زمینهای مختلف، در شهرستانها و مناطق مختلف خیلی خیلی بیشتر هست. همونطور که نمونهش رو الان در کردستان میبینیم، کردستان عراق، که از میزان کارایی در کردستان عراق خیلی بیشتره از دولت ملی عراق. مسئله بعدی که آیا می شود به اینو در یک نظام فدرال حل کرد، مسئله آزادی هست. ما می دانیم که جمهوری اسلامی از 10 کشور مستبد بالای جهان هست. از 10 تا کشور. استبداد و دیکتاتوری هم ناشی از تمرکز قدرت در دست یک نفر یا 2 نفر هست. و اون کسی که هم که مسئول خواستن همه این قدرت هست، خودش رو ولایت مطلق فقیه میگوید. ولایت مطلق فقیه یعنی دارنده قدرت مطلق و اختیارات مطلق. خود به خود بقیه مردم یعنی بدون اختیار مطلق. و این دیکتاتوری رو ایجاد میکنه که اصلا در طول تاریخ ایران سابقه نداشته است. هرگز این طور نبوده است. من تاریخ ایران بسیار خوب میخونم، جهان هم، که کسی دارنده مطلق قدرت باشد. وقتی که مردم بی قدرت باشند به طور مطلق، این یک حالت، اینو که من چون کاری نمیتوانم پس انجام نمیدهم. نتیجه آن این می شود که طبق تحقیقات ایرانی ها از متوسط کار تنبلتر هستند. یعنی از 50% از بقیه مردم جهان تنبلترند. این به علت اینه که کار و تولید در ایران وجود نداره، به علت این که طرف احساس قدرت نمیکنه. وقتی که قدرت در بین ایرانیان تقسیم بشه، خود به خود مطلقیت قدرت از بین میره، بعداً قدرت تقسیم میشه. قدرت بین اونهایی که تقسیم شد، آزادی حاصل تقسیم قدرت بین مردم هست و نهادهایی که مردم انتخاب کردند. و در پایان به 2 موضوع اشاره میکنم. یکی مسئله بحران هویت هست که الان تقریبا تمام ایرانی ها دچارش هستند. یک زمانی ناسیونالیسم ایرانی مبنی بر تشیع و زبان فارسی بود. الان تشیع شده است منبع قدرت مطلق برای ولی فقیه. بنابراین این از خط به عنوان منبع ناسیونالیسم ایرانی خارج می شود. زبان فارسی به دلیل اینکه زبان مادری اکثریت ایرانیان غیر فارسی است، اون هم به عنوان یک پایه ناسیونالیسم کنار گذاشته می شود. ولی با وجود این ارزش و تغییراتی که ایجاد شده، یک مقداری بحران هویت پدید اومده و نتیجه اون شده است هویت خواهی که بسیاری اونو به عنوان این که همونطور که دوستان اشاره کردند که اگر ناسیونالیسم فارسی افراطی پیش اومده، ناسیونالیسم افراطی ترک و کرد و بقیه هم پدید اومده و نتیجتاً اینها با هم در تضاد قرار گرفتند. این بحران هویت رو می شود در یک نظامی که قدرت تقسیم شده است و حاکمیت ملی هم سهامی شده است، حاکمیت ملی رو من در اینجا در رابطه با فدرالیسم یک تعریفی بکنم. حاکمیت ملی از نظر خارجی یعنی استقلال یک کشور، از نظر داخلی یعنی اینکه بعضی میگویند اصلا تقسیم شدنی نیست، بعضی میگویند که تقسیم شدنی نیست ولی سهامی هست، یعنی هر کسی در حاکمیت ملی سهمی داره. من با این موافقم که همه ما در حاکمیت ملی سهمی داریم، چه به عنوان یک فرد چه به عنوان یک گروه. بنابراین وقتی که اینو در سطح مناطق مختلف سهامی بکنیم، خود به خود هم این مسئله، دو مسئله حل میشه. یکی مسئله سیطره یک قوم بر قوم دیگر حل میشه که الان مرتب میگویند که فارس ها، که من مطمئن نیستم، برای اینکه این نظام جمهوری اسلامی هست و از همه شیعیان ایرانی توش نقش دارند کم و بیش، ولی مسئله این خواهد بود که یک نظامی رو پدید بیاریم که در اون نظام حق این که حاکمیت ملی سهامی بشود و هر منطقه‌ای به اندازه سهم خودش از اون برخوردار بشود. و آخرین نقطه‌ای رو که میخواهم در همین رابطه اضافه بکنم، در حل هویت ملی یا بحران ملی و همینطور نبودن سیطره یک قوم بر اقوام دیگر، مسئله تبعیض‌های نژادی، تبعیض‌های زبانی، تبعیض‌های فرهنگی هم احتمالاً حل خواهد شد. یک نظام فدرال لزوماً و حتماً این مشکلات را حل نخواهد کرد مگر اینکه به عنوان پشتوانه دموکراسی مطرح باشد، همونطور که دوستان دیگر هم گفتند، و فرهنگ ایرانی هم یک فرهنگ آزادی پذیر باشه، دموکراتیک باشه، که بشود یک قانون اساسی رو که تهیه کرد، مثل خود جمهوری اسلامی بسیار چیزاش خوبه ولی کسی عملی نمی کند. من دوستان گرامی معتقدم که ما می توانیم این رژیم رو در کلیت آن عوض بکنیم، ولی عوض کردن این رژیم کافی نیست. اگر ملیت‌های ایران نقش کلیدی در تغییر این رژیم نداشته باشند، نقش کلیدی در تعیین قانون اساسی و بعداً در ساختن دولت و تشکیل نهادهای مختلف سهم زیاد نخواهند داشت. مشکلی نیست که آسان نشود، مرد خواهد که هراسان نشود. سپاسگزارم.
مسئله نیست، من خاتمه بدم جلسه رو. فقط این رو اشاره بکنم که همه کشورهای دنیا، این کشورهایی که امروز پیشرفته و دموکراتیک ما میشناسیمشون، چند تا بیشتر نیستن توی دنیا، اینها اگر انگلیس با 60 میلیون، اگر فرانسه است با 60 میلیون، اگر آلمان با 80 میلیون، اگر امریکا با 230 میلیون، هر کدوم این چند تا کشور، هیچ کدوم همه مردم مملکت رو نمیگردونن. اینها همه اعتماد میکنن به یک تعداد آدم‌هایی که در چند تا حزبشون وجود دارن و اینها بهشون اعتماد وجود داره و اینها به نمایندگی از اون جامعه حرکت آینده این جامعه رو شکل میدن. ما در سال 2008 توی پاریس یک کنفرانسی رو گذاشتیم به نام بحث پرمخاطره اعتماد، که چه اتفاقی افتاده، این بی‌اعتمادی در داخل و خارج از ایران به وجود آمده. در حال حاضر یک نکته اساسی رو باید بهش توجه داشته باشیم. مسئله اصلی ما به دست همین 1500-2000 نفر آدمی که توی ایران زندگیشون رو در این کار گذاشتن میتونه راه به جلو ببره. همه مردم عادی الزاماً تو سیاست دخالت نمی کنن، الزاماً مسائلی که نمیدونم در آینده فردای مملکتشون وجود داره به دلایل بیشمار نمیتونه واسهشون مطرح باشه. مهم اینه که این مجموعه آدم ها این تعداد روشنفکر، این تعداد تلاشگر سیاسی، فارغ از اینی که در کدوم حزب، در کدوم تفکر، در کدوم ایدئولوژی باشن، آیا به دنبال مسائل مملکتشون واقعا هستن یا خودفروشی میکنن؟ این مسئله اصلی ماست. این مجموعه رو خیلی بزرگش نکنیم. دامنه این مجموعه که 75 میلیون نفر جمعیت امروز ایران بر اساس آمار جمهوری اسلامی و 4-5 میلیون نفر در خارج از کشور، این 80 میلیون درست همه ایرانی هستند، ولی همه مسائل ایران با اینها نیست. همه مسائل ایران با 2000 نفر آدمه. این 2000 نفر آدم چجوری میتونن قدم بردارن؟ آیا میتونن فارغ از خودفروشی، بازم دارم میگم متاسفم این واژه رو هی مرتب استفاده میکنم، مسئله ما جای دیگه است. مسئله ما خودفروشی روشنفکران و تلاشگران سیاسی مونه که توی این زمینه ها نمیخوان فردا رو فکر بکنن، میخوان امروزشون رو فکر بکنن، میخوان ویلای امروز وجود داشته باشه، میخوان مرسدس امروز وجود داشته باشه. بازم من تکرار میکنم، فردایی که جمهوری اسلامی بیفته و 100% این فروپاشی جمهوری اسلامی سرعت بیش از حد گرفته، مسائل ما برای فردای بعد از جمهوری اسلامی به مراتب بدتر از سال 57. باور کسی نمیتونه بکنه که ما با چه فاجعه‌ای میتونیم مواجه بشیم، مگر اینکه بتونیم فکر بکنیم دور یک میز با هم دیگه بنشینیم و به امروز و فردای جامعه‌مون بیشتر فکر بکنیم. از همه شما سپاسگزار هستم. امیدوار هستم که در کنفرانس آینده ما باز حضور داشته باشید.